Chosen one, focus completely on this message right now. That quiet sensation you have been carrying inside, the subtle awareness that something is about to shift. Stop brushing it aside. What is approaching your life will not arrive with an announcement. There will be no loud warning, no countdown, no dramatic signal across the sky. It will simply appear, and when it does, everything will change in a single instant. Right now, the enemy is working relentlessly, and there is only one reason for it. He understands what is about to enter your life, and he knows he cannot prevent it. Since he cannot stop what is coming, he is trying to stop you. His strategy is simple: keep you distracted, drained, and questioning yourself long enough that you overlook the moment when the door finally opens. But you are not going to miss it. Not this time. This week marks the end of something that has stretched far longer than you expected. The waiting ends. The uncertainty ends. The silence that lingered so long it began to feel permanent is coming to a close. And it is not ending because luck suddenly turned in your favor or because the timing randomly aligned. It is ending because of what you already did, because of the prayers you whispered when nobody saw you, because you kept standing your ground during moments when everything inside you wanted to walk away. Think about that moment earlier this week when you nearly reacted in a way you would have regretted. A situation came at you unexpectedly, and every instinct told you to defend yourself, explain your side, or prove your point. But you stopped. Something inside you held you back. You stayed silent. You stepped away. You chose to release it. At the time, you may have believed that silence cost you something. You may have thought walking away meant losing ground, but that silence was not weakness. That restraint was a weapon. That moment did not damage your situation, it completed it. When you chose restraint in that moment, you were not surrendering your position. You were finalizing it. What felt like loss was actually the closing signature on a document already prepared in the unseen realm. That quiet decision sealed something far bigger than you realized. It marked the moment when the enemy's authority in that situation expired. You did not ruin the outcome. You finished the process. And understand this clearly, you did not arrive at this message by coincidence. No random system guided you here. This moment was arranged long before you ever pressed play. Heaven positioned this encounter so you would hear exactly what you need at precisely the right time. This is a divine appointment, so do not scroll away. Do not let these words fade into the background while your attention drifts somewhere else. Your future is asking you to stay present right now, because if you disconnect too early, you could walk away just before the verdict over your life is spoken. In the next few moments, something important is going to be revealed. You are about to understand the very point this week where your breakthrough quietly activated without you even realizing it. And before this message ends, you will receive the declaration that closes the door on every assignment the enemy tried to place against your future. Stay with this until the final moment, because the last few days have not been easy. The atmosphere around you has felt different, heavier somehow. Not just quiet, but dense, like invisible pressure sitting on your chest. A strange tension that you cannot quite explain, but definitely feel. Maybe you moved through the week feeling slightly disconnected, as if everyone else was moving normally while you were pushing through something thick and unseen. Or perhaps you woke up in the middle of the night, your mind suddenly alert while the rest of the world slept. Your heart beating a little faster, a feeling you could not fully name, but also could not ignore. In those quiet hours, you may have felt suspended between two realities. One life that has already ended, and another that has not fully appeared yet. Standing in that space can feel confusing, almost disorienting, like you are positioned in the middle of a bridge while the shore behind you disappears and the one head is still hidden in the fog. And in that uncertain space, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. He has been telling you that what was promised has been delayed because of something you did. He keeps replaying a certain moment in your mind again and again, the instant when you stepped back, when you stopped fighting, when you chose silence instead of reaction. He labels that moment as your greatest mistake. He wants you to believe that by letting something go, you lost what you had been believing for. That by refusing to defend yourself, you somehow forfeited the outcome. But that is not what the truth says. Scripture declares that when God brings something to an end, it ends completely. The trouble that once tried to rise against you does not get to repeat itself endlessly. The enemy wants you to believe you are stuck in a cycle, that everything has reset and you must start to struggle all over again. That lie is designed to exhaust your hope. Because if he convinces you that you are back at the beginning, you will stop expecting the finish line. But you are not in a cycle. You are standing at a conclusion. The heaviness you have felt is not punishment pressing down on you. It is the weight of something finishing so completely that it cannot return. It is the final tension before a cord snaps. What you called failure was actually the final move in a strategy heaven had been guiding all along. You did not disqualify yourself. You did not delay the promise. You completed the step that sealed it. And now that you understand this, that the final step has already been taken, something inside your posture begins to change. Because true readiness is not passive. It is not quietly sitting with folded hands hoping that something good eventually appears. Readiness is an active spiritual stance. It is the moment when you stop rehearsing the delay and start living from the reality of what has already been decided. It is the bold awareness that the battle has already been settled in the unseen realm, and what remains is simply the visible unfolding. This kind of readiness carries movement inside it, like a spring releasing its tension or a seed breaking through soil, because it knows what it was designed to become. It is the quiet certainty in your spirit that whispers, "It is finished," even while the visible evidence is still forming. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are standing in position. When that internal shift happens, it opens pathways for divine movement. It creates a spiritual current that begins pulling the future closer to the present. This is not passive expectation, it is alignment. Think about the prophet Elijah during the drought in Israel. The land was cracked and dry after years without rain. There were no clouds in the sky, no signs that the weather was about to change. Everything in the natural world said the drought would continue. But Elijah told the king to prepare because he could hear the sound of abundant rain. Not see it, hear it. He sensed something in the spirit before the natural world. Revealed it. That kind of confidence may have sounded impossible to anyone standing nearby, but Elijah was not inventing hope. He was agreeing with what heaven had already determined. He simply spoke aloud what had already been established, beyond human sight. After Elijah spoke those words, he did something equally powerful. He went up the mountain and began to pray. Not once, but again and again. Each prayer was not desperation. It was alignment. It was a continued agreement with what he had already heard in the Spirit. 6 times his servant looked toward the horizon and saw nothing. 6 times the sky remained empty. But on the 7th time, the servant returned with a report. Far away on the edge of the sky there was a cloud. It was small, no bigger than a man's hand. To most people it would have looked insignificant, barely worth mentioning. Yet Elijah immediately understood what it meant. That tiny cloud was not the full storm. It was the beginning of it. It was the first visible signal that the drought was breaking and the rain was already on its way. He saw more than a cloud. He saw the future arriving. Right now you are standing in a similar moment. The first sign may appear small. It might feel like only a slight shift, a small opportunity, a brief confirmation, or a subtle change in circumstances. At first glance, it may not look like the full answer you prayed for. It may seem too minor to represent everything that was promised. But the question is not whether the sky is already filled with thunder. The question is whether you recognize the sign. Because the enemy will immediately try to minimize it. He will whisper that it means nothing. He will say it is temporary, that it will disappear just as quickly as it appeared. He will try to convince you that you should not expect too much, But faith does not measure the promise by the size of the beginning. Faith recognizes that the smallest sign can carry the arrival of something enormous. That small movement is not the end of the story. It is the opening line. You were never called to measure your future by what currently looks realistic. Realism belongs to the limits of the natural world. Faith belongs to the language of the kingdom. What you sensed in your spirit was not imagination or wishful thinking. It came from the same voice that once spoke light into darkness and commanded existence where nothing had been. That voice has been speaking over your life long before you ever recognized it. And when God speaks, His word carries its own fulfillment within it. It does not return empty, but there is something deeper happening beneath the surface of your situation that you must understand before the door fully opens. The enemy knows that he cannot cancel what God has decided for your life. That option is no longer available to him. So his next strategy is different. If he cannot stop the blessing, he will try to corrupt the way you receive it. He will attempt to make sure that when the promise finally arrives, you accept it through the wrong filter. A filter of fear, a filter of doubt. A filter that constantly whispers that the good thing in your hands will not last, because a blessing received through fear slowly becomes a burden. Instead of freedom, it turns into pressure. Instead of joy, it produces anxiety. Instead of gratitude, it creates the constant expectation that everything will collapse again. The enemy understands something important. If he can distort your perspective, he can weaken the impact of the very thing he failed to stop. A door entered with fear can begin to feel like a prison. You step into the new season physically, but your heart remains trapped in the old one. You continue carrying the mindset of limitation, even while ending inside abundance. That is why identity matters before arrival. Because when favor comes into the hands of someone who still believes they are unworthy of it, they will eventually sabotage the gift themselves. This happened once before in Scripture with a man who was given a crown. That man was Saul, the first king of Israel. He was chosen from obscurity, anointed by the prophet Samuel, and positioned in a place of authority that no one in his family had ever held before. The opportunity placed in his hands was extraordinary. He had the calling, the position, and the favor necessary to lead an entire nation. But there was one thing he never fully accepted: his identity. Even after the crown was placed on his head, Saul continued to see himself through the lens of insecurity. Instead of resting in the calling God had given him, he constantly compared himself to others. He measured his worth by the opinions of people around him. He performed for approval rather than standing in confidence. And when David appeared, young, fearless, and carrying a different kind of favor, Saul's insecurity turned into fear. That fear slowly became the compass guiding his decisions. Instead of leading with wisdom, he began reacting from jealousy and suspicion. Eventually, the king who was meant to protect the kingdom became someone trying to destroy the very person God had also chosen, not because God removed Saul's calling, but because Saul never truly believed he was worthy of the crown he carried. His identity collapsed under the weight of comparison. This is why heaven is asking something important of you right now, before the next door fully opens. Stop shrinking. Stop making yourself smaller in order to keep others comfortable. Stop dimming your voice, hiding your gifts, or softening your presence so people around you do not feel challenged by what God placed inside. You have spent too long reducing yourself to fit environments that were never meant to contain you. That season is ending. You were not anointed to blend quietly into the room. You were anointed to change the atmosphere of it. Your presence was designed to shift things. And what is about to unfold next is something many people are not prepared for. Because the next season is not only about blessing, it is also about exposure. When God releases new favor into your life, whether it appears as opportunity, influence, resources, relationships, or platforms, it does more than elevate you. It reveals what has been living inside your heart. Suddenly, your motives become visible. Your hidden fears surface. The beliefs you quietly carried about yourself are brought into the light. That may sound uncomfortable, but it is actually a gift, because you cannot carry the weight of the next assignment while holding on to old limitations that were never meant to travel with you. Capacity has to expand before the blessing arrives, otherwise the blessing appears and there is nowhere for it to rest. Imagine pouring water into a container that has never been opened. The water does not settle, it spills. That is why God sometimes prepares the vessel before releasing the overflow. Think about the widow in the book of Kings who came to the prophet Elisha in desperation. She was on the verge of losing everything. Her sons were about to be taken as payment for debt, and the only resource she had left was a small jar of oil. Elisha did not bring new oil to her house. Instead, he asked a question, "What do you already have?" At first, her answer sounded almost empty. Just a small jar, nothing significant. But the instruction he gave next changed everything. He told her to gather empty containers from everywhere she could find them. Not just a few, but as many as possible. Those vessels represented something deeper than storage. They represented capacity. And the miracle did not begin while she was thinking about the oil. The miracle began when she started pouring. As the widow poured, something extraordinary happened. The oil kept flowing. It filled one vessel, then another and another, continuing until every container she had gathered was full. Only when there were no vessels left did the oil stop. The supply was never the problem. The only limit was the number of containers prepared to receive it. That story is not just about oil. Those vessels represent expectation. They represent the space you create in your life for what God wants to release. Your capacity to believe becomes the container that holds the blessing. Heaven's provision does not run dry. The flow only pauses when there is no place left for it to settle. And right now, something inside you is shifting. You can feel it as these words land in your spirit. Old limits are loosening. The ceiling you once believed was fixed is beginning to crack. But here is where many people reach the edge of breakthrough and then step backward. They get close enough to sense the promise, close enough to feel the warmth of the new season approaching, and suddenly they hesitate. They tell themselves they need more preparation, more time, another season of refining before stepping forward. Those thoughts may sound wise on the surface, but very often they are simply fear wearing the language of caution. Preparation is important, but there comes a moment when preparation quietly becomes an excuse to avoid the step that changes everything. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness learning, growing, and being shaped. Yet when the burning bush appeared, God did not say, "Continue preparing." He said, "Now." Even then, Moses tried to explain why he was not the right person. He pointed to his weaknesses, his doubts, his lack of confidence. But heaven does not wait for you to feel fully qualified. Heaven waits for your yes, and you've already been saying yes, piece by piece, through every quiet prayer and act of obedience along the way. Every quiet yes you whispered when no one else was listening was never wasted. Heaven was collecting them all. The hesitant prayers, the moments of surrender, the nights when you agreed to trust even while you were unsure. Each one was being gathered together. What looked like small fragments to you were forming a complete answer in the unseen realm. And that moment of completion has already happened. You crossed the line without realizing it. The preparation that shaped you has finished its assignment. The wilderness season served its purpose, and the refining that once felt endless has reached its conclusion. You are not walking into another test. You are walking into the land. But before the fullness of that promise becomes visible, one final lie has to be broken. For a long time you have believed in God's promises for others. You believed the testimonies you heard. You believed the scriptures were true. You believed that God opens doors and restores lives. Yet deep inside, there was a quiet agreement that you might be the exception, that somehow the full version of the promise was for someone else. That agreement was never written by heaven. It was a ceiling created by disappointment, and reinforced every time something seemed delayed. And as long as that agreement remained, blessings could circle above you without landing. But today that sieving breaks. The assignment against you is cancelled. The delay has expired. What is moving toward you now carries your name on it. Not a future version of you, not a perfect version of you, you as you are today. So stand in this moment and agree with the truth. You are not the exception. You are the one this promise was meant for. Every prayer you whispered was heard. Every act of restraint mattered. The door is open now, and what God has spoken over your life cannot be reversed. Receive it fully.